Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another Minecraft discussion on this gorgeous morning. Oh, wow, it's just fantastic. Humidity dropped a little bit. I'm not usually too heat sensitive, though we mentioned the bugs a lot, and the bugs like it when it's sticky. And so, yeah, so that's dissipated, which makes it a little easier. Okay, so anyway, my name is Kimberly Quinn, and I'm very excited to be here with you today and little Giovanni to have a talk about living deeply, which starts with listening deeply. And I was inspired this morning by my best friend from growing up, my rooftop friend, which has become semi-famous in the local area just because of that this 7 days article that Ken the journalist and Luke the photographer were so kind to do. It's just, oh my gosh, that honestly, I think that was one of the best days of my whole life. I didn't know it was coming. The whole front page thing, nobody told me. But it was just so loaded with kindness, just kindness and generosity. But anyway, my rooftop friend is in there, and so she has stayed a mystery. And I'm going down to New York City for a conference this week, and I'm going to see her on the way back because she lives right sort of on the outskirts there of the city. And so I was inspired by her today because today is her birthday. And we've had this thing going. We've known each other since 4 years old. And we've had this thing going for decades where we call each other on our birthdays. Nothing else. And occasionally we give each other a small something, usually for a non-reason. Sorry, it was a deer fly. They're still hanging on. But we call each other. Occasionally do a card, but really it's all about the phone call. And it's right around 7. We're both early birds. Gives us a chance to get our tea and everything like that. And the reason I'm inspired to have a talk about it is because it so fits with what we're doing. Relationships, for one, 4 years old. We've gone through so much together, so much good and challenging, right? But the thing with the life minutes, that came from her. We talk about the life minutes a lot, and people think it came from, I'll say we share it now, but if I'm completely honest, which I am because I practice being honest, like you would practice, the violin or skiing or something. And in reality, it came from her, the life minutes thing. And so, and she brought it up today, which is what made me think of it. She said, I'm not smart. There was like a prickly pear, who thankfully she's released a long time ago, but she came up today. And she said, in no way am I wasting my life minutes, and I said, or even life seconds, on that particular toxic individual, who's enormously toxic, actually. And so today I want to talk about living deeply and how it starts with active listening and listening deeply. So there's a lot out there in active listening. You can actually, especially in the business world, leadership world, and it's very important, but you can literally sign up for seminars and workshops, and there's workbooks, and there's journals, and there's all this stuff to just do what little kids do naturally. Little kids do this naturally. Yeah, they can babble off for a second, but if you ever see a little, like 4 or 5 or 6-year-old, and one of their friends, or maybe even not a friend, maybe a kid in the class they don't know that much, or on the playground or whatever, comes up to them, and they're sad. There's this fellow, they're sad. Most 5 or 6-year-olds will drop everything. Or granted, they might have a window, but they will drop everything to listen to that other kid if they've got a sad face on or something like that. And then often they'll touch. They'll rub a shoulder, or they just want to be near. They want to get in, like inside that circle, to be close. And so I wanted to talk about the active listening thing because I do it with my students. How do we know when somebody's listening actively? The eye contact. True, unless the other person's autistic, because for the most part, when we put people into boxes, we got to do disclaimers. For the most part, they're not comfortable with eye contact. For the non-autistic world, many people would interpret eye contact as you're listening to me. The reflexive language, repeating it back. So that's also very important, but that also has a fine line because it can sound obnoxious. It's just very important that it's authentic. That's what all of it comes down to, because that's like therapy language. I'm hearing that, which can sound completely obnoxious if it's just transactional and not real. Okay, so there's the reflexive language, and here's the authentic piece. The authentic piece is having this attitude, this mindset of tell me more. You don't have to say that. There might be an opportunity for you to say that. But again, if it's transactional, people pick that up. Little 5-year-olds know when they're being patronized. They do. Why? Because 5-year-olds are authentic. So if it's not real, I would say don't waste your time. Okay? And, okay, so we had eye contact, reflexive language, if it's authentic. tell me more mindset, if it's authentic, diving deeply into their rib cage with care, protection, kindness, love, compassion, all that good stuff. Because we're talking about empathy, not sympathy. Sympathy is obnoxious. Empathy is real. Sympathy, and Brene Brown does a really funny thing on this. It's animated. It's like 2 minutes long. Where sympathy, and she used animals, and the animal's looking down this kind of like this hole where this other animal has fallen, the one who needs the empathy. The animal up here is saying, basically, boy, that sucks. What happened to you? I can see it's bad down there. I can see it's dark. I can see things aren't going well. Want a sandwich? Kind of thing. Whereas then and then another animal, this is much paraphrased or para-watched or something, goes down and sits next to that animal who's hurting and just basically just listens. A lot of times there just aren't words. It's just being present, mindful, being present. And that gratitude's involved in that too, because you're grateful for that person. You're grateful that they trust themselves enough to trust you to say what's in their heart. Another Dr. Dave quote, that they trust themselves enough, here we go. They trust themselves enough to trust you to share their heart with you. So there's the mindfulness, the gratitude. The whole thing is about keeping it real. So when we listen deeply with empathetic ears, not sympathetic ears, and try to climb into the ribcage of that person, not in a violating way, in a codependent way, but in a, I'm in it with you. I'm right here with you. Though I may not know your circumstances. Again, we're not saying all this. They feel it. I may not know your exact circumstances, but I sure as heck know what it's like to be afraid. I sure as heck know what it's like to feel completely alone. I sure as heck know I know what it feels like to feel not understood. And I sure as heck know what it means like to need to feel validated. Like I'm not the only one who feels like this. I don't feel like I'm crazy and everybody else is like cranking along and it's just me who's off track. We all know what these things feel like. We do. Maybe just in a whole different context. And so active listening is more than just checking the boxes of a leadership seminar. Eye contact, body posture, reflexive, transactional, stupid language, unless it's real, and to really stay out of the transactional piece and dive deeply. Treat that person. It's the golden rule thing. And I practice this. I try my best. Obviously, we all fall off the wagon because we're hungry, angry, sick, tired, whatever, the wind's blowing the wrong way, right? But when we use the golden rule and try to treat somebody how we'd want to be treated, it really kind of works pretty well. And, again, we can really get a lot of knowledge that we have inside us. It just maybe got derailed from 5-year-olds. Watch them in a sandbox. Watch them how they help a child who's been left out of something or who's been accidentally whacked with a shovel or something. I mean, they're really right there, usually, at least from what the 5-year-olds I've seen all over the place. They're very authentic because they haven't been ruined yet, by shaming messages out there and such. So when we listen deeply, we can then learn to live deeply because there isn't anything more valuable than our life minutes. And we find that out the older we get, I think. Little kids know it and the midlifers know it. It's the in-between who has to kind of maybe or might want to get back on track with that because we tend to be so much residing in our achievement awareness, as we were just talking about a couple episodes ago, which is important. We don't want to throw that out. That's also how we process the world. We're not throwing that out. But when we get into, more of an awakened awareness, that's when we're living life. That's when we're sucking the marrow out of life, is when we are listening deeply, because then we can live deeply. We talked about how when we're not other-oriented, I got to watch that othering thing because people put kind of a dumb meaning to it, because really othering to me is like being other-oriented. But anyway, when we get locked into here, it's isolating and it's lonely. And it also skews our perception of the world because we're not meant to be alone. The most introverted person in the world is still not meant to be alone. We're all connected, by a divine source. Absolutely. We're all connected. And we are not meant to be shut in here. So when we actively listen, we actively listen and listen deeply, we are then living deeply, which then leads to very deep connection. Deep connection is, and Brene Brown will say this too, is the only anecdote love obviously is involved in that, is the anecdote for shame. All that not feeling enough and flawed and defective, and basically, if we could eradicate shame off the face of this earth, we would have very few problems. A lot of psychologists out of jobs. Not a lot of battles, wars. If we got rid of shame, it would be pretty amazing. And the antidote for that is deep, loving connection. That is it. So it starts with listening deeply, living deeply, and then we will become deeply connected. That one just rolled out of me. Happy birthday, rooftop friend. Have a mindful day.